Radio.
Hear this frequency.
Stay tuned.
We are born free, we are born free. Yes, on est tous nés libres. So free. Born free.
Yes. Nyini bakagwa batuliza. You are listening to We Are Born Free Empowerment Radio.
Hear this frequency. 88.4. Hometown Berlin. We are born free. Free, yeah.
Yes. We Are Born Free Empowerment Radio. For friends and enemies. Enemies. Boo. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
We are born free, we are born free. Yes, on est tous nés libres. So free. Born free.
Yes. Nyini bakagwa batuliza. You are listening to We Are Born Free Empowerment Radio.
Hear this frequency. 88.4. Hometown Berlin. We are born free. Free, yeah.
Yes. We Are Born Free Empowerment Radio. For friends and enemies. Enemies. Boo. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
We are born free, we are born free. Yes, on est tous nés libres. So free. Born free.
Yes. Nyini bakagwa batuliza. You are listening to We Are Born Free Empowerment Radio.
Hear this frequency.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Hello, dear people, and welcome back to XPLATZFUNK. This month's edition is actually taking place not at the TAC, because usually we try to do this program from the TAC when possible, but today, as we are in collaboration with We Are Born Free Radio, we came back to where all the magic started, to where the room where Bino set up his radio station, to the space where you do a lot of community projects, a lot of activist projects, and Bino, stay in the picture. We just started.
Yes.
And today, it's almost unfortunate that we're not at the TAC, because we're talking about a topic that we are discussing at the theater and here as well. We are talking about the play Gerecht and about justice in the asylum system. So we have two guests today. We have Lydia Zimke, who is the director of Gerecht. She is one of the co-chairs of the TAC, one of the artistic directors, part of the artistic collective there. She is again the director of Gerecht, a play which we will talk about in a minute. We are joined by Philip Rush, sorry, Rush, who is a lawyer specialized on, actually, what are you specialized on, Philip?
Migration.
On migration and migration law. And together with these two wonderful guests, we are going to try and explore the topic of the play a bit, which is already justice in asylum law and how decisions are made in the asylum system by human beings. This is one thing we should not forget. Human beings are involved in all these things and how they affect other human beings. And then we're going to talk about the current status of seeking asylum and also seeking work in Germany, because one of the important one of the more important aspects of taking part in society and becoming part of a society is actually being able to participate both economically and socially in it. And there are, as far as I know, many hurdles to this in asylum law, and this is something we'd like to explore with you a bit. And hi, Bino. Okay, Bino.
All right. Yes. Wow, very nice introduction. And yes, I am happy to be here with you and my long-time comrade, friend, good friend of mine. And sometimes she got lost, but anyway, that's how it is.
I mean, this is the nice thing. We all live in the same area. We're all bound to run into each other and talk at some point, which is one of the charming things about this program that's bringing us all together at this table.
Right.
Yes, Bino.
And yeah.
How are you today?
Good. I ate muesli.
I know you ate muesli. I told you earlier. You're becoming more German than the Germans with your muesli. And yeah, no, I mean, today we're actually at your place. Usually we're at the TUC for this program. So maybe just as part of the program as well, tell us a couple of words of how this came to be.
So it is really great that you gave it to me. That is my place, but it's my place because the people accepted me to have a platform to share my ideas with others, and now like you and the rest. So in that sense, it becomes my place. But in terms of sharing ideas and the capability, the abilities I can do, like, yeah, we're on radio now.
Yeah, we're on radio, we're on video.
Right. So yeah, in those terms, I feel that it's my place. And I feel excited that today we are live from here. It was actually our dream, one of our dreams, with the other colleague, Muha, to be live on TV, which we are still, I don't know where Muha could answer that. But it's amazing that I am not alone. I'm here with you, with great people, and most especially to talk about our fate, our migration, which is very important in our cause, why we are here. Yeah.
And two more people who we don't see are Ranav and Ifatu. Ifatu's on camera as usual. Ranav is our streaming director. Thank you both for being here and for setting up in these slightly different circumstances. And Bino, you might almost say you went from being an asylum seeker to being a host in this country.
Because asylum seeker, they just put it on me. It wasn't my dream that I will.
I mean, it's a phase in.
I will seek asylum in Germany. So.
And where shall we start? Where do you want to start?
Well, I find it remarkable who is assembled at this table, because the project Gerecht would not actually exist without Bino. It would not exist without the teaching I have received by him, and also by his when his life in Germany started. And so the inspiration for Gerecht is in fact the refugee protest that happened in Berlin in 2011 and started long before, of course, in the lagers all over Germany, was then planned partly by Bino and many other, as you say, comrades. And then people came to Berlin and assembled at Oranienplatz, which is near here. And it was for me a kind of awakening time, because there was always the myth of our asylum system being just, being right, working for the best interest of the people coming to us, and using simply facts and their stories to decide who will receive protection. And I was then able to speak with Bino and many other people there and involve myself in the life there a little bit, which was not easy. It meant redirecting a lot of thinking that I had grown up to have. And one thing Bino said to me, for example, was, I didn't come here to be a political activist. I came here to be an artist, to live my life, which elsewhere I'm not able to live. And but the circumstances in Germany, which meant that a long time has to be spent in places that were not determined by himself or by the other people around him, meant that he could not live his life. So he became a political activist in order to become an artist later, and as you say now, a host. So that is a very nice connection, I feel. And then we felt for this project, there were several projects in between. We made a radio feature together. We wrote a book together, etc., etc. In Gerecht, which you could translate as justice, with the first 4 letters just being capitalized, so that we have the word just and justice in one word. To explain the title in German, the word law is semantically linked to the word just. So that's the wordplay in German, which also may create a thinking connection in the head. You stop me when I talk too much. But it makes a connection in our head that the law is just. And the title wants to question that a little bit.
I mean, I have to admit, every time I hear the title, and I may have told you this at some point, I miss a question mark at the end. I mean, I like that you didn't put it there because it leaves it much more open. But I always miss this obvious question mark because it does question. I mean, I'm not going to give the play away. I do recommend it very highly. I mean, it was a long process that led there. But I do recommend it very highly, both as a question mark on the asylum system in Germany, but also on the hoops you have to jump through and the stories you have to tell as an asylum seeker. And again, this is not a situation anyone wants to find themselves in and not something someone would choose. But maybe this is where we can bring in Philip a bit, and you can tell us just a couple of sentences. You could outline the path to asylum in Germany. Maybe this is where we can bring in Philip a bit, and you can tell us the procedure to get asylum and how long it takes sometimes.
Okay. Actually, it's easy. You apply for asylum. You can do that
The procedure
at the
to get
border,
asylum
at any
and how long
police
it takes.
department, at the immigration office or at the Federal Asylum Agency.
Okay.
And first thing they do is you get into lottery and get sent to some place. That's determined through a system called EASY that locates people within Germany according to, I think it's the population and the BIP, the net.
The net, the Bruttoinlandsprodukt,
Yeah.
the net gross domestic product.
Yeah, right, of the different federal states.
Okay.
Which is of no importance at all is where you want to go. So you might end up in
The
Chemnitz
net,
or
the
rural
Bruttoinlandsprodukt.
Bavaria.
The
You have
net
no
domestic
choice to
gross
decide.
domestic
where to go.
product.
Then you are waiting there in something called Erstaufnahmeeinrichtung, like a first
Reception center.
I mean, more colloquially, maybe known as a lager.
yeah, and it's a better description of that. But
Yeah.
and you live there with lots of people, scarce sanitary equipment.
I mean, more colloquially, maybe known as a lager.
Gemeinsam food. And a couple of euros. And you wait for your hearing there.
Okay.
And after 3 to 6 months, you're sent to a different place, to a smaller lager usually. And then you get the invitation to your hearing. You go to the hearing and tell them why you had to flee your country. And then you are sent home.
Okay.
And you wait for a decision.
Home being back to the...
to the camp. To the
Okay,
lager, yeah.
because home could also be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And am I... I mean, am I confusing the process of applying for asylum for the process of applying for a residency in German?
Yeah, it's not the same thing. It's completely different things. Yeah.
And what legal rights do people who are in Erstauffanglager have?
Yeah, as long as their asylum decision is not there, as long as they're in the procedure, they cannot be deported. That's the first and most important thing. Mm-hmm. So the asylum process protects you from deportation. And that's about it. You're not starved. You at least get physical food and physical shelter. Mm-hmm. But I think that's about the rights that you're having, yeah.
Okay, so you basically have the right to stay in the country and you have the right to stay somewhere in the country.
Yeah, and be barely alive, yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I know of processes that have taken many, many years as well. And I mean, I know the legal process is supposed to be that it's supposed to be resolved within about 6 months. It's supposed to be the maximum.
Yeah.
What happens there?
I think it's 9 actually,
yeah.
But still 9 months is shorter than most procedures take.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing actually that it can take so long because that's due to the possibility to challenge a decision of the Federal Asylum Agency in court. Mm-hmm. And the courts have a very long backlog of cases. Yeah.
Okay. Also because a lot of people, yes. Also because a lot of people are seeking asylum, and with a lot of hotspots, let's say, opening up around the world. Yeah. We're not only talking about Belarus bringing people into Germany through Poland. That's political manipulation, in my opinion. But just to ask this question, why is Germany such a popular country?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, it's relatively rich, and there is a relatively the labor market is open for unskilled or not officially recognized skilled, at least labor. That might be one of the reasons. And there is migrant communities already in Germany. So I think you don't want to be the first black person in Latvia. I can picture that at least. If it was me.
I could maybe add, I was in conversation with a colleague of Philip yesterday after our show at the theater. And he was saying about this question that it's true. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of family, a lot of friends who will, as it were, perpetuate for a certain time the myth that there is a lot of opportunity here. What he was also saying, though, is that the phrase that Angela Merkel has opened the borders in 2015, well, it's not true. It's simply not true. What we can say is she didn't close them, and that many people who came did not stay. So perhaps also the answer is that it's less difficult than elsewhere.
But nevertheless difficult.
And yes, well, quite. And then I was going to add that after my experience with Bino and then gathering more and more information and knowledge and feeling also, it's kind of also an emotional state to really understand the situation. We decided in our team that we would not concentrate so much on the refugee stories, but we actually concentrate on the law experts who have to deal with this.
So on the decision-making process that underlies basically asylum decisions. And also, I mean, I watched the play, and again, congratulations, it came out gorgeous. One of the things that you focus on is also how information is collected and how outdated this information may be. So maybe the two of you can outline what happens there a bit for us.
So I could very basically say that one instrument for judges and lawyers to come to a decision are the situation reports from all the countries where people come from, and they are updated in a certain amount of time, but it is possible also for lawyers or for other experts to request a new one. I think maybe it's not true, but yeah. So that's the phenomenon. And then I would hand to you. How is it in your daily working life to deal with this?
Yeah, usually the asylum chambers at the courts, they try to collect information on the countries that they're deciding on. At least it's in Brandenburg and in Berlin, it's not that every chamber in the court deals with every country. Usually they have countries assigned to them, so they don't have to be experts in a lot of countries. And it's not only the German government with information, it's also the governments of other states who have a migration or an asylum court system. The United States, the UK, Netherlands, Austria, Switzerland. And there's lots of NGOs who are also collecting information. And there is contact between lawyers and these NGOs. So there, you can try to get, or you can try to sneak a question into one of these NGOs' fact-finding missions. But the procedure of getting evidence in the court is formalized. So if you are saying this is a question which is important to decide the case, for example, what happens to a person that is picked up by Assad troops in Syria having stamps saying that he or she crossed the border to Turkey regularly? Is that a reason for this person to be sent to a torture prison or not? And this is a factual question, can be answered. There's either a right or a wrong answer to it. So you can apply in the formal procedure in court to get this evidence taken on. And what a court would do then is to ask the German embassy, which is closer to it, which would be, Turkey or Lebanon, and they would send somebody there to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, and another example that is also very important to our to the scripts, or the plays that we wrote that were then turned into a film, is Afghanistan. And here the speciality is that Afghanistan has very different regions, and that these regions are very differently evaluated in their safety, and so that the main reason given so that people can be or have been until very recently deported to Afghanistan was to say that that corner is safe, so people can go there. But the situation reports were very different for the various regions, and then the argumentation constructed of who could go where to be safe.
But, I mean, this is a question I kind of naively have to ask. I mean, is it fair to people to make such, let's say, it's actually a very detailed research in a way, but this kind of research gets old very quickly. And I don't know, in my imagination, it isn't very fair to the person who is seeking asylum to judge on this kind of information.
Yeah, totally true. But if you ask this question, the whole process is bogus. And this whole process has just one function, to legitimize the control of migration. Yeah. So I would, if this process gets abolished tomorrow, would be a good thing. Would be a fairer system.
Yeah, probably. But we have this process right now, and we need to deal with it in one way or another. I know that makes a lot of people's lives easy. My God, that is very Freudian.
Pays my bills.
Well, this is one of the situations where I kind of have to say, I hope you don't need to be in a job forever. I hope there are other avenues of work that might open up that do not have to do with that, but we're not there. But, okay, so you've applied for asylum. You're in the country. You have the two rights to eat and to live, eat and to stay. And you're in a camp for a very long time. And I know a lot of people, this is also why, who, for instance, seek some kind of labor. Because you either, the €2 you get there are not enough, or you're simply looking for something to do. And how does that work? I mean, you don't have the right to work theoretically.
You have it like it's a bit more complicated. You cannot apply for a work permit while you are at this first reception center in Erstaufnahmeeinrichtung. You cannot apply for a work permit, and it's like the period of time you are supposed to stay there is 3 to 6 months at least. And and after that, if you are in the smaller camp outside of the first reception center, you can apply for a work permit. That's possible.
Okay.
What you need is somebody who wants to employ you. Then there's a 5-page form.
Okay.
The employer fills out a 5-page form. Then you send it to your local immigration office. The local immigration office sends it to the local labor agency.
Okay.
The labor agency is checking if you meet the formal requirements. Like, you're not paid under minimum wage. You have 24 days of holiday a year, and there's nothing in the contract which would violate usual labor law. And then they are checking if you are employed to worse conditions than a German person doing the same job would be.
Okay.
And that's getting fuzzy because sometimes the picture or the imagination of the labor agency of what's the usual thing in the labor market is not a reality for people not being German in the labor market, not speaking the language, not being formally recognized in their skills.
Yeah.
And then if they agree and if they say yes, it's formally okay, and you are not the labor conditions are not worse than for German people, then you can get a work permit.
Okay, so they're basically on paper. Paper, you can quite quickly get into the job market if you want to.
The labor agency says they need 2 weeks to evaluate the motions. So,
well, I've had job applications that took longer than that, so so relatively fair. But I mean, one of the things people then start realizing, or a lot of people I've talked to have realized, is that they can't apply with their qualifications, for instance. So if you have a university degree, I mean, there's this classic case of people who used to do research and university work in their country of origin and suddenly ending up as cleaners here. What happens there? I mean, I know that there you need to translate and recognize and all of that, but maybe you can unfold on that a bit.
I think the quick answer is that obviously it's more important for Germans to stay with their stereotypes than to realize the potential of people. Basically. But the fixation of formalization, I don't know. I think what the employers try to do with that is to secure that people actually know what they are doing, and there is ways to.
Maybe we can close the door.
There is ways to evaluate that.
Thank you, Fatu.
There's complex procedures, for example, at the KMK, the Conference of the Cultural Ministries in Germany. They have a database with lots of universities in it, and there is processes of getting their stuff evaluated, but it takes time and money. Yeah.
And that's something you usually don't have so much when.
Maybe you also need translation and experts help for that. Yeah.
And this is also one point you get into Gerecht quite intensely, in fact, and it's quite an important point: translation and language. And I mean, in Gerecht, one of the key conflicts, in a way, is the way that language is used and translated from this highly complex German legalese into whatever language the people speak and then back. So what does that do to it?
I would expand that the difficulty extends to also translating between very different ways of thinking, and very different ways of calling things. It has, in our case, a very young translator is hired last minute because someone had an accident, and she herself is an immigrant herself, has been, is now recognized and so on, and has a job, but is very young and inexperienced, very idealistic, and wants to really do her job well, but does come to a situation where she herself censors herself and also the person she is translating, or is trying to make what he says better, or trying to really find a way to transpose it. She really tries. But the effect is that the credibility of the speaker, of the Kläger, what is that in English?
of the
claimant.
The claimant.
The credibility may be called into question. So what we deal with is the judge then tries to find out whether it is actually a mistake in the translation or whether in fact he did say something that isn't okay, and then the translator may be trying to cover up. But the core thing then is the credibility of the claimant. So that is something that the judge herself personally has to evaluate for herself.
Yeah. And this is where human beings come into the process. I mean, also we're talking about two slightly different kinds of translation. We're talking on the one hand about the translation of documents and of certificates and of university degrees and things like that. On the other hand, we're talking about a legal process in which you actually have people translating live for each other. So, yeah. You know, do you have any questions up to now?
Yeah, I think I don't have a really real question, but the issue about legal process, I think it's really quite problematic, because what the authorities, they really try to make it difficult, and for us, mainly the people who are migrants, and you find that even to start the legal process is problematic. Yeah, you have to consider a lot of things, because sometimes you have to tell the truth.
What's wrong with that?
About yourself, and which it could be problematic because of your asylum process. And so that's why I think also some of the refugees, they do not take legal actions if they are not rejected during the asylum. It's very difficult. Like, because you can't, people are scared, even the lawyers, about the lawyers. Most of the people don't trust the lawyers. So when it comes to work, then there are almost zero possibilities, because the way the legal stuff concerning work are interpreted are quite different. Like when I was in Passau, they were saying, yes, you can maybe work after...
Passau was the lager you were in, right?
Yes. After 3 years, you can ask the permission to work. So, but within that process also you can use like the Ausweis, not really a paper which says now you stay, but you can try to apply for the job. And if you find a job, you bring that address or the job appointment to us. To us means the land summit or migration office. I don't know what is the difference between the Auslandbehörde and land summit. Is there a difference or they're the same?
Yeah. The Bavaria is not like Berlin. It's it has lots of counties, and every county has an immigration office. And the county is das Landratsamt.
Yeah.
I don't know if Passau is a city of itself, or is this like a Landkreis Passau outside of it?
Yes.
I have no idea. And every of these counties has an immigration office. It's basically, Landkreis is, it's called der Rechtsträger, and immigration office is die Behörde. And yeah, but this is not so important, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So how it works, that you go and tell them here is the job and so on, and so I need the working permit. They say, okay, wait. Some wicked officials, they tell you, okay, good, go and bring your passport. You know? It happened to some people, and there is one guy I knew personally. He was from Afghanistan. They told him, go, okay, good, go and bring your passport. When he went and organized, he didn't tell even other people. He organized himself to bring the passport. And when he brought this passport to the Passau Land Summit, they told him to wait. And from nowhere, police came and arrested him. You know? So
because he had identification.
Yes. So either they trick you to bring the pass or any formal paper they can use it to deport you, or if they are honest, they tell you, okay, wait, we will call you. And what they do, they look around. Is there any German person looking for the job? Is there not a German or Italian or French, any EU member citizen? So they will just call that person to go and take that job. If the job is good and well paying. And yeah, unless the your chef is good, honest to you, or he liked you, he writes to them again and say, I need this specific person, then you can get a job. So I tried to one of our neighbor, he was having a bakery, and I tried. The guy said, I will call you. He never called me. And he said, but okay, you don't have a pulse? Okay, I will call you. So that is the problematic thing. And I don't know if you, the lawyer, you have tried to argue that if people, they have this so-called identity card, which shows them their locations, their houses, their whatever, why people are not, and they're already here anyway, the government is feeding them with taking care of their life. Why is it so difficult for the authorities to allow people to work with this paper?
Yeah, it's I think once again the easy answer is because that's the whole trick. That's what they do. They try to send the message that if you are staying in a country after the asylum motion has been rejected, life is terrible. That's the message they're sending, and that's intended. It's not by chance. It's what they want to do. If you are not helping them to, allow for your own deportation by bringing them a passport, then they try to make your life miserable, by fully intentional. That's what they're doing, and that's what they're supposed to do by the law. It's not mean people, by not necessarily, I would say, mean people. It's also people that are enforcing a brutal law. Yeah, that's what it is. And what I think is important to understand, though, is that what you described about a person from Afghanistan, this person's asylum motion must have been rejected a long time ago, right? He was not. Yeah.
He was rejected.
Yeah, I know lots of people who are living in the countryside in Brandenburg, for example, from various countries whose asylum procedures have also been terminated with a negative outcome. And since they have no passport, the immigration office cannot deport them. And so they are sitting on their villages. And the years pass, it's brutal.
Yeah, but for me, in my understanding, my own understanding, analyzing things, I think it is so wicked that you keep a person, you decide to give money, you decide to give a free place for living because it's illegal, you know. And how, no matter, that's what it makes me to think about that the people working for this government, the so-called Federal Republic of Germany, they must be totally crazy or wicked. How can you keep someone for 7 years totally like that, but you don't care? You give him or her 300 euros. You give some of the clothes, or you ask people to bring all the clothes to the lager, but not giving this person just a small paper, or just writing this Ausweis, find a job. Then, because we want to live here and we want to contribute something, look now, if this happened when I came, it would be something different. But they had to keep me in the camp. My hope to study had to go down and say, now where's my future? You know? And there are thousands of people like that, having good knowledge, but because they have nowhere to stand and use this knowledge, they end up useless. They end up like doing something which they didn't even think of, going around picking bottles, you know? And you find this person on the street or in the urban, the eyes is like he never see a piece of rest or sleep, and you say, why are you aggressive? You know? The situation is making us aggressive, hopeless, and at the end, criminals they want.
Well, something that you said when we were working together impressed me very much, is that people come from states that certainly don't serve people, to a state where they assume the state serves people, and furthermore, people are treated with dignity and according to human rights, the Charter of Human Rights.
Yeah.
And they come and discover it's not that way. Yeah. So there is that myth that exists outside of Germany, and the myth also exists inside, because my father, for example, thought, until I gathered the knowledge for myself and made these projects, he thought he was living in a country with an asylum system that cared for people deeply, that made sure that everyone who deserves protection got protection and is treated with dignity, and to some degree at least according to the Human Rights Charter. And it was very devastating for him to discover it's not that way. And in fact, what we set as an aim for Gerecht, this is the first episode, there'll be 2 more or 3 more actually, is to think, can we actually deal with this fact that we are not having a just asylum system? Can we deal with this more honestly? Like, what would it mean that if the society said, well, we don't want people to be treated fairly, because we're not making sure it happens, or we cannot, you know? I don't know, Philip, what do you think? Is this, what would you think, what is this a vision that we should pursue? Is this possible? Is this
I think it's a question of to whom you want to communicate. I think I am communicating honestly with my clients, at least, and tell them, I mean, brutally honest with them about the amount of control we're having in the process.
which is very small.
Very small, right? Yeah. It's always better to have a plan B, to work on the plan B. And for that reason, having long procedures isn't that bad. That's my take on it, at least. I hate it when courts are quick. But the public, I think, politically needs to be agitated in a direction where it says freedom of movement must be universal. I think anything below that is not easy to argue. To try to always, when you're having a system of and like what I say in German, so is guter Flüchtling, böser Flüchtling, like a mean or a good refugee. As soon as you are entering into this categorical decision making, you have to deal with questions of, do I believe this person, do I not believe this person, who am I to say this person lies, this person doesn't lie? I can't know that. So it has to be abolished by straight away, yeah? And that needs to be the political fight. To have a more humane asylum system, okay, but it will not solve the underlying problem.
Yeah, no, but I'm even thinking that a more humane is a very large vision. But to say to people, look, it's not just. And first of all, we would take away the arguments of AfD and other right-wing parties, their arguments that a lot of people are allowed to stay, which they are not. So that would be quite positive, I'd say. And we would maybe inspire the other people who believe that they live in a country with a just asylum system, that they might voice their opinion, and they might, well, this is all very idealistic.
I mean, just to have a couple of numbers to this, I don't have them in my head right now. Maybe you or Philip have them. How many people applied for asylum this year?
I haven't looked at the numbers in a long
Not a
time.
concrete number, just a ballpark.
Usually, after the Balkan and the Greek route was down, it was about 200,000 people a year.
Okay.
And it's a slight uptake this year, but not no comparison to even 2014 or 2012. Yeah, not like when the visa restrictions for the Western Balkan states were lifted, there was an intake.
Yeah.
And then came the larger intake. But it's below that.
Okay, and
so I think it was 1 million, right?
in 2014-15, yeah.
Yeah, and then it went down to half, and then it kept going.
And these are people who apply for asylum, correct? Not people who actually get accepted into the system.
It's applications, and it's also applications that get rejected for different reasons. For Dublin system,
for Dublin, so they have to go back to another country.
And also people who get children within Germany who have applied for asylum. If a child gets born or is coming later, then this also gets a new asylum procedure. So it's a huge number, but not that many cases.
Okay. I just wanted to ask this question because since we're talking about AfD and numbers, I think it's a pertinent question to ask.
I can add that in our talk yesterday, the lawyer I was speaking to was saying that he has a thought experiment in his mind that he would let the population read the statements of people who ask for protection, and he thinks they would say yes, they deserve protection, but 90% of them don't get it.
But that's, I think, the difference between popular opinion and actually having a legal system in place. That the legal system is often much harsher, but on the other hand, sometimes it's not, because public opinion can also be pretty harsh.
Yeah, right. That might be a very good idea in certain spots of this country, but I don't want to do it in, let's say Eastern Saxony. Definitely, I don't want to have public opinion decide anything there.
Well, quite. He also added there that it is statistically proven that most animosity against people coming is in the places where there's least. Yeah. Right. So the encounters do help in creating bringing out the solidarity in people.
I mean, it's always. I won't give you this example right now because it doesn't work. But a friend of mine was in the deepest southern U.S. and he's from Lebanon, and they thought he was from Hezbollah until they met him, and then they decided we all get along. They'd never seen someone from the Middle East before, so. This kind of meeting, this kind of connection to people does make it much easier to empathize with them on a human level. But Yeah, I mean, it's still, I mean, this is one point that we keep ending up at in all of the programs we've done up to now. I mean, we've done a program about elections, we've done a program about climate change and climate protection, and I don't even remember what our first program was, but it always comes down to that there are global systems in place that need reform. And for instance, if we're talking about freedom of movement, about Fortress Europe very specifically, what kind of reforms would you need to, I mean, without popular opinion, but what kind of reforms would both the asylum process, but also the process of, let's talk it, integration into a society and being able to take part in it need to be, let's say, fairer, more just, more pleasant, maybe even. I mean, that you don't have to wait in a lager for like 5 years to get accepted. So what are the reforms that could be called for, that could be put into place? And what would be the ideal reforms to the system? Or is this an unfair question on my part?
There is reform being made over time. And you were describing the labor market access as it was when you were applying for asylum in 2000 and, I don't know, when we were in Passau, 10 years ago, 8 years ago?
It is 10, almost, wow, 10
Yeah.
years, 2000.
Where we getting old?
12.
And the amount of years that you have to wait, a month you have to wait until you can get a work permit was lowered from...
I didn't get any.
Yeah, I know, but you said like 3 years you had to wait.
3 years
Yeah.
maximum. They say.
Yeah, and now it's...
Oh, they said that if you were here, that's what they used it to say.
Yeah.
If you were here 3 years, you get it, but it's not. It was not happening.
It got lowered from like 3 years to 18 months to 12 months to 9 months, now
Yeah.
6 months. So you can see there is already reform, but I don't know if I like this. I like this concrete aspect of it, but the reason why there is reform is because the economic powers tell the government, look, guys, what you're doing is completely irrational. We need those people because we have a need for unskilled labor. People who are easy to be exploited in the labor market, and this is the kind of reform we are getting, and what you can see in immigration law traditionally is Ordnungsrecht. It's Gefahrenabwehr. It's like to protect Germany from foreigners. Yeah, that's the historical the roots. Yeah, it's.
So from dangers from outside.
Yeah, right. It's to fight. Migration law fights migration. That's what it is. And now they're realizing, okay, this is this might be a problem because economically we need people to do the work, and we need people from outside the country. So there is frictions because the system logic of Abschreckung.
Deterrence.
Yeah, the system logic of deterrence, which is the reason why people are treated so badly after their asylum motions got rejected. This deterrence logic is not being compatible with the logic of exploitation because you need people to get the work done nobody wants to do. So at this point, there's frictions in the immigration system,
Right.
but it's not about humanization. It's about making it possible for people to get exploited. As you said, so I don't see the change that I want to see in that.
What change would you want to see in that?
Well, an understanding of or a questioning of the connection between a certain passport and the right to stay in a certain place. Basically, the acceptance that the fate of birth is not something you choose; it's something that happens to you.
Yeah.
So to connect to this fate of birth a certain amount of privileges is not fair.
Yeah.
And this
I
is
agree
something
there.
that it's hard. It's not that easy to understand, I guess, but it's hard to get people to believe in it.
I mean, let's put it this way: it's maybe easy for someone who has been to several countries and grew up in one country and knows another country with a different passport to understand. I mean, that's kind of the case with me. I grew up in Egypt and came here when I was 18, but I have a German passport. So, of course, that gives me I'm very privileged when it comes to motion, when it comes to movement. Movement with a German passport, you don't need to apply for visas in many cases, for instance, and you're seen as, l'Almani, so the German with the nice German with the money and the education and the civilization and things like that, but that's simply not the case. Yes, in most cases. I mean, I know people who are at least as more human than I am, even who are not accorded this privilege, and it's just a coincidence that I'm born in one place with a certain passport. And that's simply not something that's fair anymore, especially if we're talking about a world that is becoming more and more globalized, even if it is because of, let's say, economic considerations and labor flows. But when has there not been a labor flow? When has there not been a migration flow for labor?
I would maybe add that something that should be corrected is, in fact, I see another friction. I see that the population in Germany, the heterogeneous population, is much stronger and more willing to practice solidarity than the government makes out, or the government wants to accept. I mean, some examples, we saw them in 2015. It was very easy, actually, for the state apparatus to prepare for the influx of people, but they didn't. Instead, the civil society stepped in to aid, and very willingly. And so this would be a big shift in actually according the population their strength and their will for solidarity.
That too. I mean, again, this is something that we know because we just had elections, that there's a great part of the population living in Germany who can't take part in elections. Yeah. So there's about 10 to, let's say, 15 million people who are currently living in Germany without German nationality, who are, however, a constant part of society, who should be allowed to take part in this kind of decision. And talking about the popular support, for instance, in 2015, a lot of the grassroots organizations ended up turning down awards from the government because they saw the policy that the government was running, and they saw what was needed on the ground, and they said, we cannot accept this kind of honorific from this kind of government because it doesn't reflect our values. And simply on that level, there are also people, for instance, an organization that I keep coming back to, we were hoping to have them here today, is Arrivo, for instance, who organize for people without papers to be able to work in Germany, who facilitate that process. And there's a bad joke maybe that the Merkel left the borders open in 2015 because Germany needed more skilled labor, and the Syrians are one of the most educated people in the Middle East. So that's also something to take into consideration. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I know where you are going. But before you get lost, let me bring you back. I think the German government or officials or authorities, they have to revise their migration policies, and also these so-called United Nations Charter, blah blah, which they signed that, and maybe also their constitution, which says that all humans are equal. Are born equal. Someone told me that with equal rights. Maybe some people, they have no equal rights, but for me, that also goes into in my belief that all humans are born free, equal and powerful. So I think those authorities, they need some lessons from me.
Like I received them.
Well, that's
and also they could also get out of that box saying, we are civilized, we know about humanity, we know about everything, we are not like those come on, go to Uganda. Go and find out, do research how this tiny country, poor as they know that it is poor, how is it managing? Of course, Germany is also sending some money to support the refugees there, but the policies, how this country came out with these human policies, migration policies, saying, because even the government of Uganda told the population, as now we were thinking about either we can ask about the population view about migration. The population in Uganda were saying, oh, too much, maybe too much people are coming in. The government of Uganda came out and said, people, remember, we had a problem with Idi Amin. Where did you go? Most of you, your people are still today in Tanzania. Your people are still in Kenya or somewhere around the world. So what are you saying? We have to welcome our brothers from the Congo. We have to welcome our brothers from Southern Sudan. We can't leave them die because we protect our Uganda, you know? So I think these are the things also the Germans, they should be reminded about the World War I, or when Hitler was killing them, like, during the Berlin Wall, wall, very many people were fleeing. Where did they go? And some they went to Poland, some they went to Africa. Now some they became citizens and nationals of Madagascar or Uganda. We have a very strong community, a German community in Uganda. Maybe and those people who fled when Germany was still having this problem. But now today, the young Ugandans come here not just to seek for food, but they want ideas how German developed. How did they manage to make these golden streets? We want these ideas. I want to go back and build the golden streets around Kampala, in my village where I was born, so that the new generation coming after me, they don't have to look to German. Oh, no, it is possible. Our land is also, we are living in heaven. So this, I don't know why even, here needs civilization.
Okay, and I think we have to leave this discussion there. Or I think the two of you need to leave a bit soon, or shall we continue? This is a beautiful way to end it. Yes.
It's a beautiful thing to be reminded of and take with us.
Thanks. No, but we have now, as we are talking about it, we have to work on that. Let us open the possibilities, those who are having the possibilities to host people like me and others. Let us demand more open space to integrate people. Let us pick the people from the refugee camps, bring them on the board, show them, integrate them in our user working environment, so that we break that chain of exclusiveness.
I can say that the art and culture scene is enriched by new people coming constantly, and that our institutions are doing their best to host.
Well, doing a lot to make things
great
possible.
Yeah, actually you are part of them who are doing great work. And actually the lawyers also, they say, no, you are not going to deport this person, or this person have the right. So thanks a lot.
And speaking of great work, when and where can we watch the play?
The play that has been transformed to a three-dimensional immersive film on 6 screens can be seen today at 6 and at 8, at 6 and at 9. It can be seen tomorrow at 8. It can be seen on Sunday at 8, and then again in November from the 18th to the 21st. Always at 8, and on the 20th also at 5. So this is all recorded.
We both know this because we put the program together.
Yeah.
Go see it, it's great.
It is. And I actually had a closing point. Damn, I lost it. No, yes. So thank you very much, Lydia. Thank you very much, Philip, for joining us today. This conversation has been much too brief. It's something I'd like to get into at some point later on. And I am going to leave it here with these thanks. This has been XPLATZFUNK from Karam and Bino. Bino.
I thought, yeah. Anyway, you told me that you will forget my name.
Who are you anyway?
I am Bino Biansubiaklek. I am.
Okay, I'm Karam. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And thanks for bringing in these great people. And thanks for the wonderful talk. And I hope it's one of the way where we can check the mind of those sitting somewhere and decide on the lives of others, and also those viewing the population. They must take this example and say, no, I think we are all humans. We are born free, no matter where someone will come from, but is a human, must have his or her life whenever the person wants. And
Thanks for hosting us.
Yeah, same here. Welcome.
You're welcome.
So thank you. Ranav, can we see the trailer, please? So thank you very much for watching. This has been XPLATZFUNK number 4, Gerecht, broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, 88.4 in Berlin, and 90.7
megahertz in
Potsdam. And we leave it there. Roll the trailer, Ranav. Thank you very much.
Right. Great.
Seit dem neuesten Fall, Sie wissen ja, der vermisste Journalist, hat sich die Lage offensichtlich geändert. Mein Mandant kommt ja aus der Nähe des Tals Gorband, wo man den Vermissten zum letzten Mal gesehen hat.
Was hat der zur Hölle in diesem Tal Gorband gemacht? Dieses Tal Gorband, was hat er da gemacht, bitte? Haben Sie schon einmal einen Asylantrag in Deutschland gestellt?
Haben Sie schon einmal einen Asylantrag in Deutschland gemacht?
Nein.
Nein.
Die Taliban kamen von hinter diesen Hügeln hervor und ich habe es trotzdem geschafft, dieses Bild zu schießen.
Versuchen Sie bitte, sich zu konzentrieren. Ihren Aussagen darf nicht der Realitätscharakter fehlen, sonst kann ich Sie als Person nicht als glaubwürdig wahrnehmen. Verstehen Sie das?
Glaubwürdig sein.
Fakten sind hier wichtiger als Fantasie.
Ich bitte Sie lediglich um das Recht, mich nicht mehr verstellen zu müssen.
Was wäre, wenn wir die Auslegung der Gesetze sich diesen Zeiten anpassen lassen, Frau Vorsitzende? Den gesamten Amtsvorgängen zuvorkommen.
Wir hätten gern so jemanden wie Sie in unserem Land.
So.
Frau Vorsitzende, mein
Ganz
Mandant...
kleinen Moment. Was war das jetzt nochmal von vorne? Fakten, Daten, Zahl. 1, 2, 3.
Es geht um mein Leben. Sehen Sie das? Es geht um mein Leben.
Wo bist du? Basti. Ameisen. Unübersichtlich, chaotisch erstmal. Aber wenn ich sie genauer betrachte, länger beobachte, siehe da. Jede einzelne von ihnen hat außergewöhnliche Kräfte, äußerst soziale Potenziale und kommt nie auf die Idee, im Alleingang ihr Leben zu gestalten. Jede Ameise hat auch nur ein Leben. Aber da geht es nicht um ihr eigenes Überleben, sondern allein um das Überleben ihrer Kolonie, ihrer Gesellschaft. Nur die nötigste Kommunikation, nur bei Hunger oder Gefahr, Duftstoffe oder mit Fühlern. Es könnte so einfach sein. So ein effizientes, perfekt koordiniertes System, das ohne ein einziges Blatt Papier auskommt, das die Vorgänge erklärt und Vorschriften festhält, verdient großen Respekt. Dabei glaubt in der Ameisenwelt niemand an irgendwelche Belohnungen im Diesseits oder Jenseits. Ameisen sind aus meiner Sicht die einzigen Lebewesen, die wahrhaftig nach ihrem Gewissen handeln, ohne jemals eines gehabt zu haben.